Tonight's episode includes a Manta Sleep affiliate link, which helps support the show at no extra cost to you. If you've ever tried sleeping with a regular sleep mask and found that light still gets in around the edges, or the mask presses against your eyes and just feels uncomfortable, Manta Sleep takes a different approach. Their masks are designed to give you a true blackout experience while keeping pressure off your eyes, so you can actually relax and forget you're wearing one. They also have several different versions depending on how you sleep, and one of the coolest is their Bluetooth audio sleep mask. It combines the blackout mask with built-in audio so you can listen to music, white noise, or even your favorite sleep stories without having earbuds in your ears all night. And for a podcast like this, that combination just makes sense. Block out the light, put on a story, and let everything else disappear for a while. If you're looking to upgrade your nighttime routine, check out Manta Sleep and find the mask that works best for you. You can find a direct link to them in the description of each episode. They also ship worldwide. Thanks for supporting the show. Now, let's get started. Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories. And as you settle in now, allow this evening's tale to carry you into a castle library after dark, where rain whispers against high windows and every shadow feels warm, ancient, and kind. Let your body become heavy in the place where you are resting. Let your shoulders soften. Let your hands loosen. Let your breathing find a slower rhythm, as if each breath were a quiet tide moving gently in and out. There is nothing you need to solve, nowhere you need to go, and nothing that asks anything of you now. Imagine the hush of rain beyond thick stone walls. Imagine a castle standing on a hill, its towers wrapped in mist, its windows glowing faintly like lanterns in a dream. Inside, beyond corridors of polished wood and cool stone, there waits a library old enough to remember centuries of storms. It smells of paper, cedar shelves, candle wax, and the faint sweetness of dried lavender tucked between pages. As you breathe in, the room grows nearer. As you breathe out, the day slips farther away. The rain continues softly. The castle rests. The library waits. And now, without needing to follow too closely, the story drifts onward by itself, gentle and slow, like a candle flame in a room without wind. After sunset, when the last gold of evening had faded behind the western hills, the castle became very quiet. It did not become empty, for old castles are never truly empty. They keep small sounds inside them, the sigh of beams settling, the whisper of fabric in long corridors, the soft tick of cooling stone. But all the busy sounds of the day had gone. The clatter of breakfast trays, the murmured conversations in the gallery, the footsteps of servants crossing the courtyard, the distant ring of the blacksmith's hammer from the village below. All of these had faded into memory. Only the rain remained. It fell steadily over the slate roofs and the pointed towers, over the ivy that climbed the walls, over the dark gardens where roses bowed their heads. Beneath shining droplets, it threaded silver lines through the air and gathered in the hollows of carved stone. It touched the castle windows with patient fingertips and ran down the glass in wandering streams. High in the eastern wing, behind doors of oak darkened by age. The castle library glowed with a quiet amber light. It was a room of great height and gentle shadow. Shelves rose from the floor almost to the vaulted ceiling, where painted stars had faded over time into soft blue-gray. Ladders rested against brass rails. Tables stood beneath green-shaded lamps. Globes, maps, and curious instruments lay arranged with the calm dignity of objects that had waited many years to be noticed. At the far end of the library, a hearth burned low. The fire was not bright or eager. It moved slowly in shades of honey and red, occasionally sending up a small sigh as a log shifted into ash. The warmth spread outward, touching the edges of carpets, the legs of chairs, and the spines of books bound in leather, linen, and cloth. The library had a keeper, though she did not think of herself in such grand terms. Her name was Elianor Vale, and she had cared for the castle's books for many years. She was neither old nor young in the way stories sometimes require people to be, but somewhere in that gentle middle distance where time begins to feel less like a road and more like a garden. Path walked many times in different weather. Elianor loved the library most after dark. During the day, visitors admired it. Scholars requested histories. Children traced maps with wondering fingers. The castle steward came in search of old records and left with ink on his cuffs. But at night, when the lamps were low and the rain softened the world outside, the library seemed to remember itself. It breathed, it settled. It became not a place for finding things, but a place for being held. On this rainy night, Elianor moved slowly between the shelves, carrying a small brass lamp in one hand and a folded wool shawl over her arm. Her footsteps made almost no sound on the thick blue carpet that ran down the central aisle. She paused here and there to straighten a book that leaned too far, to tuck a loose ribbon marker back between pages, to check that the shutters were latched against the weather. The tall windows along the northern wall looked out over the castle gardens. Beyond the glass, the world was blurred and silver. The rain turned every tree into a shadow, every path into a glimmering thread. Farther away, the lake at the foot of the hill was only a darkness, breathing beneath mist. Elianor set the lamp on a table near the windows and listened. There was the rain, steady and soft. There was the fire, low and companionable. There was the faint creak of the old shelves. And beneath these, almost too gentle to hear, there was another sound. A page turning. Elianor smiled. She did not hurry toward it. In the library after dark, one did not hurry. One allowed things to reveal themselves at their own pace, especially on nights when rain had made the borders between ordinary and enchanted a little less certain. She followed the sound through the history alcove, past the cabinet of keys, past the case of illuminated manuscripts whose gold initials glimmered like captured sunrise. At last she reached the round reading nook beneath the western turret, where a curved bench sat tucked beneath a narrow window. There, in the lamplight, lay a book open upon a cushion. No one sat beside it. No hand had turned its page. Yet as Elianor watched, the paper lifted gently, as though stirred by a breath of air, and settled onto the other side. The book was small, bound in blue cloth, faded almost to gray. On its cover, stitched in silver thread, was the image of a castle under a crescent moon. Elianor had seen many unusual books in her years as keeper, but she could not remember shelving this one. She sat down beside it, drew her shawl around her shoulders, and read the first line on the open page. In the hour when rain forgets to end, the quietest door may open. Elianor's smile deepened. She had long ago learned not to be surprised by the kindness of mysterious things. The library had always held secrets, not dangerous ones, not sharp or troublesome secrets, but the kind that softened a person's heart. A shelf that smelled of summer fields in midwinter, a drawer that sometimes contained a pressed flower from a reader's childhood, a little brass bell that chimed only when someone found exactly the book they needed. The castle itself seemed to gather such wonders the way moss gathered rain. Elianor rested one hand near the blue book, not touching it yet, and looked toward the window. Outside, the rain fell in long silver veils. For a moment, the reflection in the glass showed not the reading nook, not the lamp, not Elianor's calm face, but another room beyond the room. She saw a corridor lined with candles. She saw shelves covered in white dust. She saw an archway shaped like two branches meeting overhead. Then the reflection softened back into rain. The book turned another page. Elianor read on, not because she wished to uncover a mystery, but because the words felt like warm tea on a cold night. They told of a hidden part of the castle library, a room that appeared only during long rain after moonrise. It was called the Rainbound Room, and it held books that were never written with ink. Some were written with the memory of falling leaves, some with the hush before dawn, some with the first snow of a forgotten year. And one, the story said, was written with the dreams of every person who had ever fallen asleep while listening to rain. Elianor had heard rumors of the Rainbound Room when she first came to the castle. The previous keeper, Mistress Arlen, had mentioned it once while polishing spectacles by the fire. She had said that the room could not be found by searching, only by quietness. Then she had smiled, as if that explained everything. Now, beneath the western turret, the little blue book continued to turn its pages. Elianor rose. She took up the lamp and left the book open on the cushion. She did not need to carry it. Somehow she knew it would remain where it wished to remain. The words she had read seemed to settle inside her like a map drawn not on paper, but on breath. She walked back through the library. The rain tapped gently on the windows, and her lamp cast a moving pool of gold across the floor. Shadows of shelves leaned and stretched around her, tall and tender. She passed the astronomy section, where brass astrolabes glinted among books about constellations. She passed the herbals, their pages filled with painted rosemary, thyme, foxglove, and moonflower. She passed the old fairy tales, bound in red and green and violet, each one resting as if dreaming of forests. At the center of the library stood a spiral staircase of dark iron. It wound upward to the gallery and downward, though few ever took it down. The lower rooms were used mostly for storage. Trunks of old curtains, cracked frames, extra candles, records no one had opened in decades. Yet tonight, as Elianor approached the staircase, she saw a faint shimmer on the lowest step. It was not light exactly. It was more like the memory of light after closing one's eyes. She placed one hand on the rail and began to descend. The air cooled as she went down. The sounds above grew softer. The rain remained, but now it seemed to come from all directions, not only from the windows overhead. It murmured behind the walls, beneath the steps, through hidden channels in the stone. The castle was listening to it. The castle was drinking it in. At the foot of the stairs, Elianor found a corridor she knew well, though it felt changed in the lamplight. The stones were damp with a faint sheen. The air smelled of earth, paper, and rainwater. Along the left wall stood several doors, all familiar. The linen store, the West Archive, the room of broken chairs. But at the corridor's end, where there had always been a blank wall, there was now an archway. It was shaped like two branches meeting overhead. Elianor paused before it. Beyond the arch lay darkness, but not an empty darkness. It was soft and layered, like velvet folded many times. From somewhere within came a glow as faint as moonlight behind clouds. She stepped through. The rainbound room was smaller than the great library above, yet it seemed to hold a deeper kind of spaciousness. Its ceiling was low and curved, made of pale stone veined with silver. Shelves lined the walls, but they were not made of wood. They appeared to have grown from the stone itself, smooth and flowing, each shelf shaped like the ledge of a quiet cave. Instead of windows, the room had panels of glass set high in the ceiling. Rain moved across them in endless patterns, and the watery light made everything shimmer. No candles burned, yet the room was visible in a blue-gray glow, calm and dreamlike. Books rested on the shelves, but not all of them looked like books. Some were bound in mist-colored silk. Some had covers like polished bark. One appeared to be made of pressed clouds. Another lay wrapped in a ribbon of dried grass that was somehow still green. There were scrolls sealed with wax the color of plum skins, and thin volumes that seemed to hum very quietly, like bees deep inside a summer wall. At the center of the room stood a round table, and on the table sat a single silver bowl filled with rainwater. Elianor approached. The surface of the water reflected the ceiling, the rain, the pale shelves, and then, slowly, something else. She saw the great library above, the fire burning low, the blue book open beneath the western turret. Then the image changed. She saw the castle gardens in daylight years ago, when the rose arches were newly planted. Then earlier still, when the castle walls were being raised stone by stone beneath a wide spring sky. Then earlier yet, when the hill was only grass and wind and wild flowers, with no castle at all. Elianor watched without reaching, without asking the bowl to show more. The water knew its own pace. After a while, the reflection settled into the image of a child asleep beneath a library table, curled beside a sleeping dog while rain poured outside. Elianor recognized the child after a moment. It was herself, many years ago, on her first week at the castle, too shy to speak to anyone for long, and too fascinated by the library to leave it. She remembered that storm. She remembered the dog, old Bram, with his warm side rising and falling beside her. The memory did not feel far away. It felt close, folded gently into the rain. On the table beside the bowl lay a book, bound in soft brown leather. Its cover bore no title. As Elianor looked at it, small letters appeared, darkening slowly, as if written by invisible ink, things kept safe by rain. She touched the cover with her fingertips. The book opened. Its pages were not filled with ordinary writing. Instead, each page held a scene, delicate and moving, like a miniature painting made of water and moonlight. Elianor saw a woman rocking a cradle while a storm soothed the roof above. She saw an old sailor seated by a window, listening to rain and smiling at the memory of the sea. She saw a fox asleep in a hollow beneath roots, while droplets beaded on its fur. She saw a village baker waking before dawn, grateful for the wet streets and the deep quiet before ovens were lit. None of the scenes were dramatic. None demanded attention. They were small and whole. They were moments in which the world had softened enough for some tired creature to rest. Elianor turned the pages slowly. One showed the castle cook sitting alone after a winter feast, drinking mint tea while rain polished the courtyard stones. Another showed a young prince from generations past, hiding from a formal dance and reading poetry beneath a staircase. Another showed Mistress Arlen, the former keeper, standing in the very rainbound room, laughing silently as a book of dreams fluttered around her shoulders like a bird. The room seemed pleased to be remembered. Elianor sat at the table, and for a long while she simply listened. Rain on the glass above, rain in the walls, rain somewhere beyond the earth. The sounds layered together until they became almost like music, a lullaby without melody, made only of patience. Then, from the lowest shelf, a small book slid outward with a whisper. It did not fall. It waited. Elianor rose and lifted it carefully. The cover was the pale green of new moss, and it was very light in her hands. On the first page, in silver script, were the words, "For the guest who cannot sleep." Elianor's expression softened. Every castle has a guest who cannot sleep. From time to time, someone traveling far from home, someone carrying too many thoughts, someone restless with hope or sorrow, or merely awake because the rain has stirred some old longing in the heart. The book's pages were blank. Eleanor understood then what the room was asking, and the request was gentle. The book did not need a grand tale. It needed something quiet, something to guide a wakeful mind toward rest. On a small shelf beneath the table, she found a pen with a nib of dark silver and a bottle of ink the color of rain clouds at dusk. She sat again, opened the moss-green book, and began to write. She wrote of a path through a garden after rain, where every leaf held a pearl of water. She wrote of a lantern swinging from an unseen hand, leading not quickly but steadily toward a warm room. She wrote of a chair beside a fire, a blanket folded over its arm, and a cup of chamomile cooling on a table. She wrote of shelves and shadows, of books sleeping upright, of the kindness of old stone, and the way silence can become a shelter. As she wrote, the words did not remain flat on the page. They shimmered, rose slightly, and became images just above the paper. A tiny lantern glowed. A tiny cup gave off a thread of steam. A tiny fire flickered without heat. The book was listening, and the room listened with it. Eleanor's hand moved slowly. She did not search for perfect phrases. She let the rain choose the rhythm. Above her, the storm softened. It was still raining, but the sharpness had gone from it. The sound became rounder, more distant, like pebbles being turned over by a gentle stream. In the silver bowl, the reflected images grew dim and peaceful. When Eleanor finished, she placed the pen beside the ink and waited for the page to dry. Then she closed the moss-green book. A quiet change passed through the rainbound room. The shelves seemed to settle. The glass panels above glowed once very faintly as lightning moved somewhere far beyond the hills, too far away for thunder to trouble the castle. The little book in Eleanor's hands warmed, not like fire, but like sunlight, remembered. Then the moss-green book lifted itself from her palms. It floated slowly across the room, no higher than her shoulder, and came to rest on a shelf near the archway. There it tucked itself between a blue-gray volume and a scroll wrapped in white ribbon. It looked as though it had always belonged there. Eleanor bowed her head, partly to the room, partly to the rain, and partly to the long, gentle work of keeping safe the things people barely knew they had given away. When she returned through the arch, the corridor beyond was darker than before, but familiar again. The damp sheen on the stones had faded. The rooms of storage waited with their ordinary doors. Behind her, the rainbound room remained for a moment, filled with soft blue light. Then, without a sound, the archway became a blank wall. Eleanor climbed the spiral staircase back to the main library. The fire had burned lower. The lamps glowed like small moons. The tall windows held only the rain and her reflection. Yet everything seemed slightly changed, as though the library had been turned a fraction closer toward dreaming. She returned to the western turret. The little blue book was still open on the cushion, its pages no longer turned by themselves. On the page before her, a new sentence had appeared. The quietest door opens inward. Eleanor read it twice, then closed the book gently She carried it to a shelf near the fairy tales, where there was an empty space just the right size. When she slid it into place, the silver castle on its cover caught the lamplight once, and then became still. For a few moments, Elianor stood among the shelves, with her shawl around her shoulders, and felt the deep comfort of the room. Far below, the castle slept. In the guest chambers, travelers lay beneath embroidered quilts, while rain blurred their dreams. In the servants' wing, the kitchen cats had curled together near the cooling ovens. In the stables, horses shifted and sighed in clean straw. Even the ravens in the tower had tucked their heads beneath their wings, and somewhere, perhaps in a chamber overlooking the garden, perhaps in a small room beneath the eaves, a wakeful guest who had been staring into darkness felt, all at once, the mind begin to loosen. The thoughts that had circled and circled began to drift apart. The rain on the roof became a path. The path led to a lantern. The lantern led to a chair beside a fire. And there, in that imagined warmth, sleep came quietly at last. Elianor did not know this for certain, but she felt it. Some knowledge arrives softly, not as fact, but as peace. She moved through the library one final time, putting the room to rest. She lowered the wicks of the lamps. She placed a screen before the hearth, leaving enough warmth to glow safely through the night. She closed the curtains halfway, so the rain could still be seen by anyone who happened to wake and look. At the central table, she paused beside a stack of returned books. Tomorrow they would be shelved. Tomorrow someone would ask about the genealogy of mountain kings, and someone else would search for a recipe involving pears and honey, and a child would want the story with the dragon who preferred tea to treasure. Tomorrow the library would belong again to footsteps, questions, dust motes, and daylight. But tonight, it belonged to rain. Elianor took up her lamp and walked toward the doors. Before she left, she turned back. The library stretched away from her in gentle darkness, row upon row of patient books, ladders resting, globes dreaming, maps folded into silence. The rain stroked the windows. The fire breathed once behind the screen. Somewhere in the shelves, paper settled with the faintest sigh. "Good night," Elianor whispered, though whether to the books, the castle, or the rain, even she did not know. Then she stepped into the corridor and closed the oak doors behind her. The library remained. It stood in the high eastern wing, warm at its heart, dark at its edges, listening as the rain continued its long, soft conversation with the night. The castle around it dreamed in stone and timber. The hills beyond the castle dreamed beneath mist. The gardens dreamed in silver droplets and bending leaves. And in the hidden place behind the wall, where the rainbound room waited beyond ordinary finding, the moss-green book rested on its shelf. Its pages held a small lantern, a quiet path, a chair near a fire. It held the promise that even the most wakeful mind could one day grow still. It held the sound of rain becoming rest. The night deepened, The clouds moved slowly over the moon. The lake below the hill lay smooth and dark, receiving every raindrop without complaint. In the orchard, apples shone faintly among wet leaves. Along the parapets, water gathered and fell in silver beads. The whole world seemed to be breathing in the same slow rhythm. In the guest room beneath the eaves, the wakeful traveler slept. Their face had softened, their hands were open on the blanket. The rain tapped above them, but no longer as a sound to think about. It had become part of sleep itself, part of the gentle border between the known world and the dreaming one. And perhaps in that dream they found the castle library. Perhaps they walked barefoot over a blue carpet that felt warm beneath their feet. Perhaps they saw the shelves rising into shadow, the lamps glowing low, the rain wandering down the windows. Perhaps they found a book open on a cushion, waiting without urgency. And perhaps when they sat beside it, the book did not ask them to read, it only invited them to rest. So the castle kept its quiet watch. The library held its warmth. The rain kept falling, softer now, softer still, until even the droplets seemed sleepy. The fire became embers, the lamps became gold shadows, the shelves became silhouettes, and all through the castle, every room, every corridor, every hidden stair and dreaming window settled deeper into peace. Now the story too begins to settle. The rain grows distant. The castle grows soft around the edges. The library fades into a warm and gentle dark. There is nothing more to follow, nothing more to hold. Only the hush of rain, only the comfort of shelter, only the slow, kind breathing of sleep. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.